They thought she was fragile. They thought her age meant weakness. They thought the trembling hands, the slow steps, and the soft eyes were all she had to offer. But Grandma had been underestimated for a lifetime, and that mistake would cost them everything. Her home had stood for decades, a monument to memory and love. Every brick carried a story, every corner whispered a secret, and she had lived in it quietly, watching the world pass by, while her family slowly forgot the woman who had held it all together. The heirs arrived on a crisp morning, the type of morning where the air felt sharp enough to cut through pretense. They came dressed in polished shoes and tailored suits, masks of concern plastered over greed. They smiled, laughed, and feigned affection, but Grandma saw past it all. Her son, once her pride, now avoided eye contact, letting his wife take the lead. The daughter-in-law's sweet tone dripped with impatience, her fingers tapping insistently on the table, as if the documents before them were the most urgent thing in the world. "Sign here," she urged, "just a formality." Grandma nodded slowly, each movement deliberate. She did not speak, she did not argue, she only observed. For years, she had watched them. Every gesture, every lie, every moment they tried to assert control. And she had waited. Because patience, when wielded correctly, is more dangerous than anger. The lawyer arrived quietly, a man who owed his entire career to Grandma's kindness decades ago. He had rewritten their greed into a trap long before they realized it. Every clause, every line, every word had been chosen with precision. And now, all he needed was for her to make the smallest gesture, to sign. She picked up the pen, not hesitantly, not nervously, calmly, with the slow certainty of someone who knew exactly what the next moment would bring. The heirs leaned forward, smiles widening. Victory was theirs. They had planned for everything except foresight. She signed each page, slowly, meticulously, her pen gliding across the paper like a conductor leading a symphony no one else could hear. When she set the pen down, she finally spoke. "I've given you exactly what you wanted." The room froze. They thought she meant compliance. They thought they had one. But they had missed the smallest, most crucial detail. She had given them only what they believed they were asking for. Every paper had been crafted to activate clauses that would nullify their authority, freeze their access, and transfer power into a protective trust, one they would never control. The lawyer spoke now. "I will read only one sentence," he said. The simplicity of it was terrifying in its precision. One sentence could undo decades of assumed control. One sentence could reveal every flaw in their arrogance. They leaned in. They had no idea what awaited them. "I hereby confirm that all properties, accounts, and decisions are to be held in trust under the sole guidance of the beneficiary, with immediate effect upon any attempt to coerce, manipulate, or bypass the wishes of the original owner," he read. Silence. Pens dropped. Faces paled. Their carefully constructed plans dissolved into the air like smoke. Every signature they had forced, every push, every demand, they had created their own downfall. Grandma's calm, steady gaze remained fixed on them. No anger, no triumph, just awareness. She had not fought, she had not schemed in haste. She had waited, observed, and acted at exactly the right moment. The heir's lawyer slumped in his chair. His confidence, the very thing that had carried them to the brink of victory, evaporated in an instant. They realized now that they were no longer the masters of the house, of the property, or of their own plans. They were pawns in the hands of a mind they had dismissed for decades. Weeks passed, and the consequences of that single day unfolded like a storm. Bank accounts froze. Transfers were blocked. Partners and investors received notices they could not ignore. Decisions once taken for granted required approval by a board they could not sit on. Meanwhile, Grandma lived her life quietly. As if nothing had changed, she brewed tea, tended her garden, and welcomed children who came to learn in her home, unaware of the power that had once been tested and proved. She had not sought revenge. She had sought justice, and the difference was absolute. The heirs tried subtlety. They tried manipulation. They tried pleading. Every attempt was met with legal precision and unyielding consequence. Their own arrogance, their impatience, and their greed had created a chain reaction that Grandma had orchestrated decades in advance. In the evenings, she would sit by the window, looking at the garden she had cultivated, thinking not of anger, but of life. Her husband had once said, "Patience is strength hidden in plain sight." She understood now that strength could be invisible, silent, and unassailable. The house had become more than a home. It was a sanctuary, a classroom, a testament to foresight, and a fortress that could not be breached by greed. And Grandma, the quiet architect of it all, remained at its heart, unshaken and victorious, not because she had taken revenge, but because she had understood what it meant to act at the perfect moment. Her legacy had begun that day, and it would ripple through generations, teaching lessons of patience, observation, and quiet power far beyond the reach of those who had once thought they could control her. The heirs would never forget the lesson, but Grandma didn't need them to. She had built a future far larger than any single confrontation, one where influence, foresight, and wisdom endured long after voices had faded. And in the stillness of the house, in the quiet footsteps of children and the gentle sway of the garden, one truth echoed clearly. Power does not roar, it waits, it watches, and it prevails. The weeks following the courtroom battle passed in a strange silence. The heirs, once so confident and brash, now moved like shadows, quiet, hesitant, uncertain. Each day brought them reminders of the fortress they had never breached. A fortress built not of walls, but of foresight, patience, and strategic brilliance. Grandma, on the other hand, moved through her home with the grace of someone who had won without lifting a hand. She tended her garden with deliberate care, the scent of roses and jasmine blending with the faint rustle of autumn leaves. Each plant seemed to lean toward her presence, as if aware that she had outwitted a family that thought wealth and youth could overpower experience. Visitors arrived, neighbors, distant relatives, and children drawn by curiosity. None knew the battles that had taken place behind closed doors. None needed to. The house exuded an energy that carried lessons in subtlety, patience, and quiet power. Even the walls seemed to whisper guidance: observe before acting, wait before assuming, and never underestimate the mind that knows how to endure. Meanwhile, the heirs had begun to unravel. Their attempts to regain control were methodical at first. Then, desperate, they made calls, wrote letters, and even tried informal negotiations. But every move they made triggered legal clauses, pre-planned contingencies, and oversight boards they could not influence. Every attempt to maneuver ended in frustration. Every action reminded them of their miscalculation. Grandma had foreseen every angle, every loophole, every possible attempt at circumvention. One afternoon, the eldest heir sat alone in his study, reviewing documents he had hoped would provide leverage. His hands trembled slightly, the weight of decades of misjudgment pressing down on him. The contracts, the property deeds, the trust agreements, they all bore the same elegant design. A mind that thought far ahead. A strategist who had turned patience into an unbreakable shield. He thought of the courtroom. He remembered her calm gaze, her slow, deliberate signing of each page. He remembered the slight smile on her lips, the kind that did not celebrate victory, but acknowledged inevitability. That day had been a revelation. She had not acted impulsively. She had waited until the exact moment when action would yield complete, irreversible results. Outside, the garden thrived. The children played in sunlight streaming through the windows, their laughter mingling with the quiet hum of life. Grandma watched them, not with pride or arrogance, but with satisfaction. She had created a world where knowledge, patience, and foresight were more valuable than wealth or power. She had nurtured growth in the lives of others without ever needing recognition. The heirs, by contrast, became increasingly obsessed. Every missed opportunity, every failed negotiation, every blocked transaction felt personal. But Grandma did not intervene further. She allowed consequences to unfold naturally, letting her planning speak for itself. She understood that the most profound victories were not won through confrontation, but through the quiet application of wisdom over time. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, the eldest heir approached the house. He had come hoping for reconciliation, for some oversight, for a glimpse of mercy. He found only locked gates and neatly maintained grounds. The garden seemed untouched by the human desire for dominance or control. The house emanated serenity, and for the first time, he understood the depth of his misjudgment. He thought back to the countless times he had dismissed her advice, the moments when he had assumed youth and ambition outweighed experience. Now, in the fading light, the truth was undeniable. He had been outmaneuvered not by force, not by confrontation, but by foresight, patience, and meticulous planning. Grandma had played a game they had never even realized existed. Weeks turned into months. The heirs tried different strategies, legal challenges, appeals, attempts at influencing stakeholders, but every path led to the same dead end. Every effort revealed more about the precision with which Grandma had orchestrated her legacy. Every failure strengthened the lesson: patience, Observation and strategic foresight are forces that cannot be rushed or ignored. Inside, Grandma continued her quiet life. She invited children to learn, encouraged neighbors to grow, and quietly nurtured the foundation she had established. The property, once the center of conflict, became a hub of education, growth, and resilience. Every brick, every corner, every sunlit room was part of her design, a living testament to a mind that had waited, watched, and acted with perfect timing. One evening, as she sat by the fireplace, she reflected on her journey. She remembered the battles, the family she had loved and who had tried to undermine her, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing justice delivered, not through anger, but through intellect and foresight. She understood that real power was not demonstrated by wealth or intimidation. It was demonstrated by understanding the world, predicting consequences, and acting when the moment was perfect. The heirs, now shadows of their former confidence, occasionally caught glimpses of the house from afar. Each sighting reminded them of the day they had misjudged her, of the calm authority in her gaze, and of the meticulous planning that had left them powerless. They could not confront her, they could not undo her work, and they could not escape the lessons she had embedded in their lives. Grandma's presence extended beyond her immediate circle. The children she mentored carried forward her principles. Communities benefited from the foundation she had established. Even those who had never met her learned, indirectly, the value of patience, observation, and calculated action. Her victory was complete, not because she had taken revenge, but because she had created a legacy that would endure far beyond the reach of the impatient and the greedy. And as the night settled over the property, the house remained alive, not as a battlefield, but as a sanctuary of wisdom. Every window reflected the lessons learned. Every room held a fragment of guidance. Every corner whispered the truth that Grandma had always known. True power is quiet, true victory is deliberate, and the mind that waits observes and acts at the perfect moment will always prevail. The house had settled into a rhythm that outsiders could not perceive. Its quiet halls carried the echoes of wisdom, the subtle scent of strategy, and the unspoken authority of a woman who had seen decades of ambition crumble before foresight. Grandma moved through these halls with a calm certainty, her eyes scanning every detail, every corner, every interaction. To any casual observer, she was merely an elderly woman tending her home, but within her mind, every move, every potential outcome, and every subtle ripple of influence was accounted for. The heirs had begun to fracture. Their confidence, once bolstered by wealth and arrogance, had been replaced by unease. They met in private rooms, speaking in hushed tones about what had gone wrong. Their plans thwarted at every turn. Letters went unanswered. Calls were returned with vague legalese. Doors that were once open to them were now firmly closed. They had attempted subtle manipulation, hoping to sway advisors and board members. But every attempt was anticipated, every loophole sealed. One of the heirs, the eldest son, walked the streets of his city late one night, feeling the weight of misjudgment pressing down on him. He thought of the courtroom, the moment Grandma had signed those papers with calm precision, the way she had watched him with eyes that seemed to see straight through his intentions. He remembered the small, deliberate smile that had told him, without words, that every effort he had made was already accounted for, every move already neutralized. Back at the house, life flourished in a way the heirs could never understand. Children played in sunlight streaming through high windows. Books lined the walls, each selected with care to encourage curiosity, resilience, and understanding. Conversations about patience, observation, and strategy were embedded in daily activities, so that lessons were learned without lectures. Guidance was given without force. Every object, every room, every aspect of the house had a purpose beyond its appearance. Grandma's influence extended beyond the physical walls. The foundation she had established provided scholarships, funded schools, and supported communities that had previously been overlooked. The children who benefited had no idea of the strategic brilliance behind it all. They merely absorbed lessons of discipline, responsibility, and ethical conduct. Theirs was a world shaped silently, effectively, and irrevocably. The heirs, increasingly desperate, tried to appeal to courts, investors, and even community leaders. They crafted intricate plans, believing that persistence could overcome foresight. Yet every plan unraveled. Every legal maneuver met pre-planned clauses. Every investment was monitored. Every step blocked. They had assumed that age and quiet demeanor equaled vulnerability. But Grandma had long ago created structures that anticipated greed. impatience, and overconfidence. Meanwhile, within the walls of the house, Grandma's days flowed with serene purpose. She tended the garden, brewed tea, and welcomed those eager to learn, unaware of the history being written quietly around them. Each interaction, each lesson, each piece of advice was measured, deliberate, and layered with wisdom that stretched beyond immediate comprehension. She did not boast, she did not seek recognition. Her victory was already complete, unfolding in the lives of others, and the consequences faced by those who had underestimated her. One afternoon, the eldest heir attempted to meet her privately, hoping that charm or pleading might sway her. He arrived at the gates of the house, confident and composed, only to be met with quiet indifference. The garden thrived, children's laughter filled the air, and the house stood impenetrable, a silent fortress of intelligence and foresight. Grandma did not greet him personally. She had no need to. The structure she had established spoke louder than any words could. The heir felt a momentary pang of realization. He understood, too late, that this was never about confrontation, nor about physical control. It was about understanding, predicting outcomes, foreseeing attempts, and creating a system where patience and observation held more power than impulsive ambition. His confidence faltered, replaced by a humbling awareness that he had been outmaneuvered not through conflict, but through intellect. Months passed, and the heirs continued to unravel. Their attempts at influence became frantic. Desperate, they tried to appeal to community opinion, hoping to rally support, but each attempt was neutralized by the subtle infrastructure Grandma had built. Reports, approvals, and decisions were rooted through layers of oversight she had long anticipated. Each blocked path, each denied request, each setback reinforced a single, undeniable truth. Her patience and strategic planning had created a system that could not be rushed or broken. Within the house, life moved with the quiet power of inevitability. Children learned, communities thrived, and every action reflected the enduring strength of foresight. Even the staff and volunteers, unaware of the deeper battles, absorbed lessons of patience, observation, and integrity, passing them on to the next generation. Grandma's presence was felt in every small choice, in every detail, in the rhythm of life itself. The heirs began to notice subtle patterns they could not explain, opportunities that had once been available to them slipping away, colleagues hesitating without reason, agreements collapsing in unforeseen ways. They had assumed that wealth, influence, and age would protect them, but they were confronting the consequences of underestimating wisdom, patience, and strategic foresight. One evening, as the sun set in a cascade of orange and gold, the eldest heir reflected on his journey. Every attempt at manipulation, every burst of impatience, every misjudged action now seemed a lesson in humility. The realization was clear, though bitter. He had been a pawn in a game he never saw, a player in a narrative crafted decades earlier, designed not to humiliate, but to teach. Grandma, seated quietly in her favorite chair, looked out over the garden. Her eyes, steady and unwavering, reflected a lifetime of understanding. She had never needed to raise her voice. She had never needed to act hastily. She had simply waited, observed, and acted with precision. The garden, the children, the thriving foundation, all of it was a testament to a life spent anticipating consequences, predicting ambition, and crafting an enduring legacy. The heirs, now scattered and cautious, occasionally glimpsed the house from afar. Each sighting reminded them of the one lesson they could not unlearn. Patience, intelligence, and foresight are powers no amount of wealth or youthful ambition can overcome. Their failures were not random, they were inevitable. In the quiet moments of twilight, the house whispered its truth. It was not a threat, it was not a boast. It was a demonstration of inevitability, a living proof that the quiet, patient, and observant mind holds more power than the loudest, most impatient voices. Grandma's legacy, now fully in motion, extended far beyond the confines of property. Courtrooms or family squabbles, communities flourished, children learned resilience, knowledge spread, and in the hearts of those who had once thought themselves invincible, humility took root, quietly, permanently, unavoidably. And somewhere, in the delicate balance of every choice, every consequence, every lesson, one truth resonated through the house: the garden, the foundation, and the very lives it touched. Strength is silent, patience is power, and the mind that observes and acts at the perfect moment will always prevail. The air had changed in the city and the surrounding villages, though most did not notice. The quiet power Grandma wielded had begun to ripple outward in ways unseen but undeniable. Her house, once simply a family home, had become a hub of subtle influence, a sanctuary for those who sought knowledge, guidance, and growth, and all the while, the heirs remained unaware that every desperate maneuver they attempted was being absorbed, anticipated, and nullified by structures and foresight they could not perceive. Inside the house, the rhythm of life was almost imperceptible to outsiders, but perfectly calibrated to shape futures. Children explored corridors lined with books and artifacts, each chosen for their lessons in resilience, ethics, and patience. Volunteers guided students through practical challenges that taught more than academics. They learned timing, strategy, and the importance of observation. Grandma herself appeared sparingly, her presence quiet yet commanding. One look, one word, one gesture could redirect an entire day's lessons. And the children never realized they were absorbing the greatest masterclass of their lives. The heirs, meanwhile, were unraveling in subtle but dramatic ways. Financial attempts to regain control faltered. Investors hesitated, projects stalled. Their reputations, once unshakable, began to show cracks as whispers of the legal fortress Grandma had established spread quietly through networks they had once controlled. Meetings meant to sway opinion were met with polite indifference, and opportunities slipped away like sand through fingers. The heirs were learning, painfully and repeatedly, that impatience and arrogance are easy to exploit and impossible to hide from a mind that plans decades ahead. One evening, the eldest heir returned to the house under the guise of reconciliation. The gates, however, remained firmly closed. He walked the perimeter, observing the garden, the children playing, the volunteers working, and the orderly, deliberate structure of every space. He realized that this was no longer about property. It was about foresight, influence, and enduring power. Every corner, every decision, every element of the foundation operated like an invisible network, channeling the flow of life and learning in ways beyond comprehension. He could feel it, this quiet dominance, this orchestrated perfection. For the first time, he understood that Grandma's victory was not a moment. It was a continuum. It was not one with confrontation or loud declaration, but with patience, planning, and an intimate understanding of human nature. Every choice he had made against her, every burst of ambition, had been anticipated, neutralized, and rendered irrelevant. Inside, Grandma continued to shape lives without spectacle. She guided children through tasks that demanded observation, problem-solving, and ethical decision-making. Volunteers learned patience, discipline, and foresight as they assisted with projects, unknowingly absorbing her lessons as well. The foundation she had created began to impact communities far beyond the city, providing scholarships, mentorship, and support for those who had never dreamed of opportunity. Her influence had become structural, woven into systems, routines, and relationships that extended her reach far beyond her physical presence. The heirs' frustration grew, not because of direct confrontation, but because they could sense the effects without understanding the source. Deals fell through at critical moments. Investments stalled. Partnerships dissolved under mysterious pressures. They were playing a game whose rules they could not see, and the invisible architect of it all had long stopped needing to engage personally. They realized too late that her genius lay in invisibility. The quiet mind, the patient observer, the strategist who allowed consequences to unfold naturally. This was the form of power they had never encountered. Meanwhile, within the house, the garden bloomed as a metaphor for the careful orchestration of life. Each plant, each path, each arrangement had been placed with intention, teaching lessons about growth, timing, and environment. Children ran through spaces without realizing they were learning about responsibility, foresight, and ethics through every movement. The volunteers, though unaware of the full story, absorbed discipline and guidance, spreading it through their own networks. Every day, the house became a living testament to strategic vision, executed with subtlety and precision. Grandma spent her evenings reflecting on her life, the family she had loved and who had tried to undermine her, and the careful, quiet victory she had achieved. She had never sought revenge. She had simply ensured that her legacy, her understanding, and her vision would persist, untouched by arrogance or impatience. The heirs' failures were not her focus. They were simply the natural consequences of her design. The city and villages surrounding the house began to feel the change in ways they could not articulate. Children nurtured in the foundation grew more disciplined. thoughtful and observant. Families who once struggled began to thrive under programs Grandma had created. Schools adopted principles inspired by her work, though most never realized her direct involvement. Every ripple, subtle and intentional, reinforced the idea that true power is silent, deliberate, and enduring. The heirs, isolated from these currents of influence, began to realize that their attempts to regain control were futile. Their wealth, status, and previous influence could not contend with a system built on foresight, patience, and strategic execution. They were left to reflect on their arrogance, understanding that a mind that observes and waits is capable of shaping outcomes far beyond immediate perception. Grandma's legacy continued to unfold, quietly but irresistibly. The house had become more than a home. It was a crucible of wisdom, a sanctuary of strategy, and a living classroom of life's most crucial lessons. The children, volunteers, and communities who interacted with it learned lessons far more powerful than any property or financial advantage. They learned about patience, foresight, resilience, and the unseen impact of thoughtful action. In the twilight hours, Grandma sat in her favorite chair, gazing out over the garden. The laughter of children and the hum of life around her filled the space with warmth and energy. She did not need validation, confrontation, or recognition. Her victory was complete, not because she had punished her family, but because she had created a system, a structure, and a legacy that would endure for generations. Every leaf, every brick, every carefully tended plant carried a lesson. Every volunteer, every student, every child bore witness to her vision. And through it all, one truth resonated clearly. Patience is not weakness. Observation is not passivity. Strength is quiet, deliberate, and enduring. The mind that waits, watches, and acts at the perfect moment will always prevail. The foundation had become more than bricks and books. It was now a living organism, breathing knowledge, discipline, and resilience into every life it touched. Children, volunteers, and community members moved through its corridors unaware that each step, each task, each subtle challenge was a thread in Grandma's grand design. What outsiders saw as simple schooling, gardening, or mentorship was, in fact, a carefully orchestrated ecosystem teaching patience, foresight, and moral strength. Grandma walked through the halls one morning, her steps deliberate, her eyes sharp, noting the interactions around her. A child struggled to solve a puzzle and, without her intervention, faltered repeatedly. She paused, observing quietly. Only when the moment was right did she step in with a question, guiding the child's thought process subtly. The lesson, though small, carried an echo of strategy, observation, and delayed action. Meanwhile, the heirs' desperation deepened. They had attempted to influence legal advisors, sought support from community leaders, and even tried public persuasion. Every move, however, backfired. Legal clauses she had designed decades earlier activated automatically, negating each of their attempts. Community initiatives they tried to disrupt continued without interference, powered by the very structures Grandma had put into place. Every effort reminded them of a singular, inescapable truth. They were up against foresight and patience, not brute force. One heir, the youngest, attempted to confront Grandma directly. He arrived at the gates, carrying letters of apology, promises of cooperation, and requests for reconsideration. The house, however, remained serene, impenetrable and silent. Children played in the garden, laughter ringing through the air, as if to emphasize the contrast between the chaos he felt and the calm control she had established. His words fell on an audience of quiet discipline. Unheeded and irrelevant, she did not respond, for the victory had never required her voice. Her structures, her foresight, and her patience were the instruments of power. Back inside, the foundation's influence continued to grow. Local schools adopted programs inspired by her mentorship, even if they did not know its source. Children exhibited leadership, empathy, and resilience beyond their years. Volunteers developed a deep understanding of strategy and observation, applying these principles in their lives and spreading the lessons further. What had begun as a home, then a sanctuary, had grown into a hub of societal change, driven entirely by the foresight, patience, and subtle influence of one woman. Grandma spent her evenings in quiet reflection, watching sunlight fade over the gardens she had nurtured for decades. She recalled the early years, when her family had doubted her, when the heirs had sought control, and when her strategy had first begun to take shape. She had learned long ago that confrontation is fleeting, but the consequences of thoughtful planning endure. She had not acted out of anger or revenge. She had acted from understanding, from foresight, and from a deep knowledge of human nature. The heirs, now isolated from influence, began to understand the consequences of their arrogance. Deals they had assumed were secure slipped away. Partnerships they thought were guaranteed crumbled inexplicably. Each failure reinforced the lesson they had once ignored. The mind that observes, waits, and plans decades ahead cannot be rushed or undermined by impatience or greed. Their frustration grew, but they could no longer trace its source. Grandma's influence was omnipresent yet invisible, pervasive yet subtle, and utterly impenetrable. In the community, word of the foundation's success spread quietly. Children from underprivileged areas thrived under mentorship. Volunteers adopted life-changing principles, and the local economy benefited from the ripple effects of education and guidance. Even those who never met Grandma personally were touched by her foresight. Her influence had become structural, extending far beyond what anyone could have imagined, shaping outcomes and creating opportunity in a way the heirs could never comprehend. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky with orange and violet hues, the eldest heir observed the property from a distance. He saw children running through the gardens, volunteers engaging in purposeful activity, and the house itself standing as a testament to deliberate design. He realized painfully that he had never truly understood her. He had assumed age equaled weakness. That ambition outweighed experience. Now he saw the truth. The house, the foundation, and every detail within it were expressions of a mind that had anticipated decades of action and consequence. Grandma's presence, though quiet, was felt in every decision, every interaction, every life touched by the foundation. She had built not just a home, not just a legal fortress, but a system capable of enduring, teaching, and thriving independently. The children learned resilience, the volunteers learned strategy, and the heirs learned humility, all without a single word of confrontation or threat from her. In her private moments, Grandma reflected on the deeper significance of her victory. This was never about material wealth, control, or revenge. It was about ensuring that wisdom, patience, and strategic foresight could endure and shape lives far beyond her immediate sphere. She understood that true power manifests not through confrontation, but through influence, guidance, and the subtle shaping of outcomes over time. The heirs, increasingly isolated and powerless, began to fracture emotionally and socially. Their attempts to regain influence only highlighted their lack of understanding and foresight. Each setback was another confirmation of Grandma's strategic genius. Their arrogance and impatience, once their strengths in their own eyes, had become liabilities they could not overcome. Inside the foundation, life moved with deliberate rhythm. Children solved problems, volunteered, and grew under guidance that was subtle yet powerful. Every success reflected the silent hand of a strategist who had planned not just for the immediate future, but for decades to come. Every challenge faced, every lesson learned, carried echoes of foresight, patience, and moral clarity. And as night fell over the property, the house seemed to breathe with purpose. It was no longer merely a home. It was a symbol, a living testament to the enduring power of observation, strategy, and delayed action. The community thrived, the children matured, and Grandma's legacy unfolded in real time. One truth echoed through every room, every corridor, and every life touched by her influence. True strength is quiet, patience is power, and the mind that waits observes and acts at the perfect moment shapes destinies beyond comprehension. Years had passed since the heirs' failed attempts to seize control, yet the echoes of their arrogance lingered faintly in the corridors of the house, like a shadow that had once been bright, but was now dimmed by the light of wisdom and patience. Grandma moved through the home with ease, attending to her garden, mentoring children, and observing the subtle rhythms of life that unfolded around her. Each moment was a testament to her deliberate planning, a careful choreography of lessons, influence, and foresight that unfolded naturally, without confrontation or spectacle. The heirs had fragmented, each one had taken a different path, driven by desperation, regret, or an attempt to salvage what remained of their pride. The eldest, haunted by his failure, spent hours revisiting the legal documents, hoping to find a loophole, a technicality, anything that might allow him to regain power. But the system she had built was airtight. Every clause, every trust arrangement, every contingency had been anticipated, and every attempt to circumvent them failed. The youngest heir, once impulsive and bold, had become cautious to the point of paralysis. Even minor decisions, required careful deliberation, for the lessons of patience and foresight were now embedded in every aspect of life he touched. Each failure reinforced the inescapable reality. Grandma's mind had crafted outcomes that could not be rushed, manipulated, or forced. Meanwhile, the house itself thrived in its own quiet authority. The foundation had grown to encompass multiple programs, scholarships, mentorship, community outreach, each designed to extend her influence and propagate the principles she held most dear: patience, observation, integrity, and resilience. Children who once struggled in small towns found guidance and opportunity through the network she had created. Volunteers learned the value of deliberate action and careful observation, spreading her influence further, often without knowing its origin. Grandma walked the halls and watched. She observed the children's interactions, noting the moments where a guiding word or subtle suggestion could lead them toward insight. She noted the volunteers' diligence, their patience, their growth, and the ripple effects of their learning in the wider community. Every day was a layer in a masterful design, a structure that ensured her values endured across generations. One day, the eldest heir attempted a bold move. He traveled to a local meeting where some of Grandma's programs were being discussed, hoping to influence decision-makers and regain a foothold in the network she had built. But the plan faltered almost immediately. The community leaders, familiar with the structured approach of the foundation, resisted the intrusion politely but firmly. Every attempt he made to insert himself was met with subtle redirection, a reminder that the system she had created was both resilient and self-sustaining. The house and its grounds had become a living classroom. Children learned strategy not just through books, but through problem-solving exercises, community engagement, and collaborative tasks. The garden itself became a metaphor for life's lessons. Every plant was placed deliberately, every pathway designed to teach timing, patience, and observation. Even the smallest tasks, watering plants, maintaining the grounds, organizing materials, carried lessons of foresight and responsibility. Grandma's presence was subtle but undeniable. She rarely intervened directly in conflicts, instead allowing children to navigate challenges and learn from outcomes. When intervention was necessary, it was precise, gentle, and guided by careful timing. Her influence was pervasive, yet invisible, and every lesson, every insight, was absorbed without the need for explicit instruction. The heirs, now observing from a distance, could see the effects of her guidance but could not touch them. Opportunities slipped away, partnerships failed, attempts to reclaim influence were thwarted by a combination of legal structure and social trust she had carefully cultivated over decades. Their frustration grew, but the source remained hidden from them, reinforcing the lessons they had long resisted. In the evenings, the house glowed with the soft light of activity. Children studied, discussed, and played. Volunteers collaborated, organized, and innovated. The rhythm of life reflected deliberate design, teaching responsibility, foresight, and ethical conduct without explicit enforcement. Each success was a subtle reminder of the quiet power that patience, observation, and strategy could create. Grandma often paused in the library, observing the results of her work. She remembered the struggles, the family conflicts, the legal maneuvers, and the countless hours spent anticipating every possible scenario. She understood that victory is not always immediate, not always visible, and often requires decades of patience. Yet, when it unfolds, its impact can resonate far beyond the original scope. The heirs, now fully aware of their inability to influence events, began to fracture socially and emotionally. Their attempts to regain control only highlighted their lack of strategic foresight. Every setback reminded them of a simple, unavoidable truth: the mind that observes and waits holds more power than the hands that act impulsively. Grandma's legacy continued to grow. Programs expanded to other towns, other communities, and even other cities. Children matured into leaders. Volunteers became mentors, and the influence of her work spread silently but powerfully. Every decision, every initiative, every small interaction contributed to a network of knowledge and guidance that could not be dismantled by impatience or greed. The house, once a simple family home, had transformed into a symbol of strategic brilliance. It embodied the lessons of patience, foresight, and deliberate action. Even those who never met Grandma personally benefited from her foresight, absorbing values and insights that would shape their lives for years to come. And as the sun set, casting long shadows across the garden and halls, One immutable truth resonated within every corner of the property. True power does not shout, it observes. It waits, and when the moment is right, it acts with precision that shapes destinies far beyond immediate perception. The years had given the house a rhythm of its own. What had once been a simple family home had transformed into a sanctuary of knowledge, foresight, and quiet authority. The laughter of children intertwined with the gentle rustle of leaves in the garden, creating a symphony that seemed ordinary to those who saw it, but extraordinary to those who understood its subtle lessons. Every element of the house, from the arrangement of furniture to the placement of each book, had been designed to cultivate wisdom, patience, and resilience. Grandma moved through the halls with deliberate grace, her presence a calm anchor amidst the unfolding energy of learning and growth. She observed interactions, noted patterns, and intervened only when her timing could maximize insight. To an outsider, she appeared to be a kindly elder guiding children. To those within the house, she was a master strategist whose subtle interventions shaped the trajectory of countless lives. The heirs, scattered and weakened by years of failed attempts, had grown silent. Their plans to regain control were now rarely spoken aloud, each one aware of the futility of confrontation. Their failures were complete, financial, social, and emotional. Every attempt to manipulate outcomes was anticipated and neutralized. Each realization of powerlessness was a harsh reminder that they had underestimated a mind built on patience, foresight, and calculated action. Meanwhile, the foundation extended its reach, touching communities far beyond the immediate neighborhood. Programs for education, mentorship, and ethical leadership expanded to surrounding towns and villages. Children who had once faced hardship now thrived, learning not just academics, but the subtle art of observation, timing, and strategic thought. Volunteers became teachers of life itself, spreading the lessons further and amplifying the impact of Grandma's carefully crafted influence. One day, the eldest heir made a final, desperate attempt to approach the house under the guise of reconciliation. He expected confrontation, negotiation, or perhaps even mercy, but the gates remained firmly closed, and the house itself seemed impenetrable. Children laughed and played in the garden. Volunteers conducted activities with precision, and the house thrummed with an energy that was entirely self-sufficient. It was a fortress not built of walls, but of foresight, structure, and deliberate action. Inside, Grandma observed quietly. She did not confront, scold, or lecture. Her work was complete, her influence embedded in the very fabric of the house and the lives it touched. The eldest heir left, realizing at last that victory could not be forced, and influence could not be reclaimed through impulsive action. Every lesson he had ignored as a youth now weighed heavily on him, a painful acknowledgement of wisdom he had failed to recognize. The garden, ever vibrant, served as a living metaphor. Plants required patience, care, and understanding to thrive. Every child who watered, pruned, or cultivated a plant learned these lessons without realizing it. Each pathway guided thoughtful movement. Each classroom arrangement fostered observation and collaboration. The house had become an ecosystem of learning, resilience, and strategy, functioning independently yet reflecting the subtle hand of Grandma's foresight. As the foundation grew, so too did its impact. Programs expanded to new regions, creating opportunities where none had existed. Children matured into leaders, volunteers became mentors, and communities experienced the ripple effects of deliberate, patient guidance. Every success was evidence that true influence is invisible yet enduring, silent yet profound. The heirs watched from a distance, powerless to intervene. Their wealth, status, and ambition had no bearing against the intricate system Grandma had constructed. Every attempt to manipulate outcomes only highlighted their lack of understanding and the precision of her planning. They were learning the final lesson. Albeit reluctantly, foresight, patience, and strategic thought are forces no impulsiveness, greed, or arrogance can overcome. Grandma's evenings remained moments of reflection and calm. She would sit by the window, watching the sun set over the garden, the children playing, and the volunteers guiding them. She thought of the decades of planning, of the quiet victories over family arrogance, and of the systems she had built to endure beyond her own life. She understood that true power manifests not in confrontation, but in the ability to shape outcomes, guide growth, and create structures that perpetuate wisdom and resilience. Every corner of the house, every path in the garden, every program in the foundation carried her influence. The lessons were subtle yet undeniable: observe before acting, understand before deciding, and exercise patience in the pursuit of lasting impact. Those who engaged with the house absorbed these lessons, consciously or not, carrying them forward into their own lives and communities. The heirs, increasingly isolated and humbled, could only watch as Grandma's vision unfolded. They realized, perhaps too late, that the power they sought to seize was never theirs to claim. It had been nurtured, structured, and deployed over decades through strategic foresight and unwavering patience. Their failures were complete, their influence nullified, and their understanding of true power forever altered. As night fell, the house glowed softly in the fading light. Children rested, volunteers reflected on the day's achievements, and the garden stood as a symbol of meticulous care and enduring wisdom. Every element of the house echoed one fundamental truth: strength does not need to be loud. Patience can shape destiny, and the mind that waits, observes, and acts with deliberate precision creates a legacy that outlives time itself. Time had layered wisdom over the house, like the gentle patina of decades. What had begun as a simple home had transformed into a living testament to patience, foresight, and subtle influence. The laughter of children, the diligent work of volunteers, and the serene rhythm of the garden were all part of a delicate ecosystem, meticulously designed to teach lessons that would ripple through generations. Grandma moved through the halls with quiet authority, observing interactions, noting patterns, and intervening only when the precise moment demanded her guidance. Her presence was a silent anchor, a source of unseen power that shaped lives without confrontation. To outsiders, she appeared as a benevolent elder. To those within the house, she was a master strategist whose every subtle action carried immense weight. The heirs, long defeated and diminished by years of frustration, had grown cautious to the point of paralysis. Their attempts at influence had become rare and hesitant, each one carefully measured, yet invariably blocked by the intricate structures Grandma had built. They were living reminders of the consequences of arrogance and impatience, and each failure reinforced a truth they could no longer ignore. Foresight and strategic patience surpass wealth, status, and impulsive ambition. Inside the house, the rhythm of growth continued unabated. Children engaged in projects that required teamwork, critical thinking, and ethical decision-making. Volunteers guided them, applying lessons learned from their own experience under Grandma's mentorship. The garden, meticulously maintained, served as a living classroom where every plant and pathway conveyed lessons in patience, observation, and resilience. Even the smallest tasks were imbued with subtle teachings, shaping minds without overt instruction. One day, the eldest heir made a desperate, final attempt to gain influence. He approached the foundation under the guise of offering assistance and insight. Yet his efforts were met with polite refusal. The programs operated seamlessly without his input. Children thrived, and volunteers managed challenges effortlessly. The realization struck him fully: his presence was unnecessary, his ambitions irrelevant, and his past arrogance had been thoroughly neutralized. Grandma observed quietly from a window, her gaze calm and unhurried. She understood that victory had never required confrontation. Her influence was woven into the very structure of the house, the garden, the programs, and the minds of those she had mentored. Every outcome unfolded naturally, a testament to decades of careful planning, observation, and patience. The foundation's reach continued to expand. Communities that had once struggled found new opportunities through its programs. Children matured into capable leaders. Volunteers became mentors, and the values of patience, foresight, and ethical action spread quietly but powerfully. The house had become an epicenter of lasting influence, touching lives far beyond its immediate walls. The heirs watched from afar, powerless to intervene. Their failures were complete, not through confrontation, but through the quiet inevitability of Grandma's design. Their wealth, influence, and ambition were irrelevant against a system built on foresight and deliberate action. Each failure served as a lesson, harsh but undeniable, reinforcing the principle that the mind that waits, observes, and acts strategically wields more power than any loud or impulsive force. Grandma's evenings were moments of reflection and tranquility. She would sit by the window, observing the setting sun over the garden, the children at play, and the volunteers guiding them. She reflected on decades of planning, the family conflicts, and the systems she had created to endure beyond her own life. Her victory was complete, not through confrontation, but through the enduring impact of careful foresight and guidance. The house itself had become a symbol of deliberate power. Its architecture, the placement of every object, and the rhythm of daily life all reinforced lessons of observation, patience, and strategy. Children and volunteers absorbed these lessons, consciously or unconsciously, carrying them into their own lives and communities. The influence of the house spread silently, irreversibly, shaping the future of those who engaged with it. The heirs, increasingly isolated and humbled, were forced to confront the depth of their misunderstanding. They realized that the power they had sought to seize had never been theirs to claim. It had been nurtured, structured, and executed with precision over decades by a mind attuned to consequence, timing, and human behavior. Their failures were complete, their influence nullified, and their understanding of true power forever transformed. As night fell, the house glowed softly in the moonlight. Children rested, volunteers reflected on the day's work, and the garden stood as a living testament to the deliberate care and planning that had gone into every detail. The house, once a simple home, had become a monument to strategic brilliance, patience, and moral foresight. And in the quiet stillness of that night, one unshakable truth echoed through every room, every corridor, and every life touched by the house. Enduring influence is silent, true power is deliberate, and the mind that observed each failure reinforced the truth that the most formidable power is silent, patient, and deliberate, capable of shaping outcomes without overt action. The children, now maturing into young adults, embodied the lessons Grandma had instilled. They understood responsibility, foresight, collaboration, and the importance of ethical decision-making. Volunteers applied their experience to guide new generations, propagating the principles embedded in every corner of the house. The garden, the classrooms, the programs, all continued to teach the values of patience, observation, and strategic action, ensuring the legacy would endure. Grandma's final reflection was simple but profound. Victory is not measured by immediate gains or loud declarations. True success lies in creating systems, guiding growth, and shaping influence that persists beyond personal presence. The heirs' failures, the thriving community, and the flourishing children were proof that foresight, patience, and deliberate action hold power far greater than impulsive ambition or temporary authority. And as the night settled over the house, with moonlight reflecting on the paths, the gardens, and the halls alive with learning, one immutable truth resonated across every life touched by her presence. Silent strength endures, patience shapes destiny, and the mind that observes, waits, and acts with deliberate precision leaves a legacy that transcends generations. Grandma smiled, knowing that her work, her guidance, and her influence would continue long after her time. The house was not just a home, it was a living testament to wisdom, foresight, and enduring power, a beacon for every child